These machines chewed through solid rock, carved trenches 30 feet deep, and swallowed entire pipeline projects whole. Then the world completely forgot about them. One ran on a 2,000 horsepower diesel engine so massive it had to be transported in separate pieces. Another was the very first mechanical digger ever built, powered by steam. These aren't myths. These are the 10 most forgotten trenchers that were shockingly powerful. Let's count them down. Number 10. The Buckeye. Number 88. 1902. To understand why trenchers became so powerful, you first have to understand where they started. And it all begins with James B. Hill, a machinist working in Bowling Green, Ohio, in the early 80s. Hill recognized a critical problem in agriculture. The waterlogged clay soils of northwest Ohio needed underground drainage tile to be laid in long, precise ditches. Doing this entirely by hand was backbreaking, slow, and expensive. So in 1893, while working at a machine shop, Hill built the world's very first successful mechanical trenching machine, a steam-driven ditching device that would change everything. He patented this invention in 1894 under patent number 523,790, describing it as a traction ditching machine. The unit, now famously known as the Buckeye No. 88, was built in 1902 and featured a 7.5-foot digging wheel powered by a steam boiler that stood 5 feet tall and 3 feet in diameter. The steam engine used a 5.5-inch diameter piston with a 7-inch stroke. This machine worked the fields of Oklahoma from its construction in 1902 all the way until more than 3 decades of real field work. It was so historically significant that in 1988 the American Society of Mechanical Engineers officially designated it an International Historic Mechanical Engineering Landmark, placing it in the same category as the original Xerox machine and the first nuclear reactor. The company Hill ultimately helped establish the Buckeye Traction Ditcher Company, would go on to become, in the words of one historical account, the largest tile ditching and construction trenching company in the world for more than 50 consecutive years. The number 88 survives today on display at the Hancock Historical Museum in Findlay, Ohio. It is the original ancestor of every powerful trencher on this list. Without this steam-powered machine scratching through the Ohio clay in 1902, none of what follows would have existed. Number 9. The Cleveland Baby Digger, 1924. In the early 1920s, a water and sewer contractor named A.J. Pinote, based in Cleveland, Ohio, built himself a small-wheel ditcher to complete a job in Detroit. The machine worked so well that other contractors immediately started asking where they could get one. Recognizing the opportunity, the company pivoted and the Cleveland Trencher Company was officially established Just 1 year later, in 1924, they released what they called the Baby Digger, a name that significantly undersells what the machine actually was. The Cleveland Baby Digger was a wheel-type trencher with 10 digging buckets attached around the circumference of its excavation wheel. Every single motion of the machine was mechanically transmitted to every part through an intricate system of chains and gears. The wheel itself was driven by a pair of spur gears that meshed directly with teeth on the outer sides of the wheel. The entire digging structure was raised and lowered using cables wound on worm-driven drums. In a single stroke, this machine transformed trench digging from an industry that relied entirely on back-aching human labor into a fully mechanized continuous operation. It was sold to the People's Natural Gas Company of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1924, and it began a revolution. Over the following 3 decades, specialized trench excavators became completely standard equipment on industrial sites, road construction projects, housing developments, and anywhere pipelines needed to be laid. The Cleveland Baby Digger's power and capacity were increased through multiple generations of upgrades, and updated versions of it remained a core part of Cleveland's product line well into the 19th. Cleveland Trencher would eventually be acquired by American Hoist and Derrick Company of St. Paul, Minnesota in 1968, operating under that ownership until For big cross-country pipeline jobs with the right geological conditions and no obstructions, the Baby Digger and its descendants could achieve a level of continuous production that nothing else at the time could match. That was the Cleveland legacy. And it started with a machine people called, somewhat misleadingly, a baby. Number 8. The Parsons Ladder Ditcher, 1905 to 1960s. If you want to talk about forgotten trenchers, the Parsons Company deserves a spot near the top of that conversation. Parsons was the oldest continuously operating trencher manufacturer in the entire world, building its very first production trenching machine in 1905 or 1906 out of a cramped, converted, abandoned church in Newton, Iowa. That is not a metaphor. They literally started in a church. What made Parsons remarkable was the sheer scale their machines could achieve in the ladder ditcher category. Their flagship design, the ladder ditcher, used a moving chain of digging buckets arranged on an inclined frame, essentially a massive mechanized conveyor belt of scoops to cut and remove material with extraordinary efficiency. Their largest models were capable of cutting trenches up to 12 feet wide and 12 feet deep in a single continuous pass. The Parsons 355 model became one of the most celebrated trenching machines of the mid-20th century. Between 1964 and 1974, it held the distinction of being the largest capacity ladder trencher available anywhere on the market. It came equipped with a Detroit 6-cylinder diesel engine and a 32-inch trenching width, and examples of it were still being auctioned and used on active job sites decades after production ended. The company was sold to the Cowering Company in the late 1960s, then went through several more ownership changes. Siemens Company in 1976, then Maxon Industries in 1992. Maxon continued making Parsons-branded walk-behind trenchers until finally retiring the line after more than a century of continuous production. Even after production ended, Maxon continued stocking replacement parts and digging chain for the old Parsons models because the machines simply refused to die. The Parsons name is nearly gone from modern conversation, but for over 100 years, it was one of the most trusted names in underground construction. That kind of staying power is earned. Number 7. The Barber-Greene Hydrostatic Trencher. 1916 era. Harry Barber and William B. Greene launched their company in 1916, and by 1926, Barber-Greene had become the best-selling trencher brand in the entire country, selling more trenching machines than any other manufacturer. What set Barber-Greene apart was innovation. While other companies were still wrestling with purely mechanical drive systems, complex arrangements of drive shafts, gearboxes, chains, and sprockets, Barber-Greene developed and commercialized a hydrostatic trencher mounted on crawler tracks. This was a technological leap. Hydraulic technology allowed the machine to move and dig simultaneously, and to do both faster and more efficiently than anything using purely mechanical power transmission. Before this innovation, trenchers were cumbersome mechanical beasts. Every adjustment required stopping the machine and manually reconfiguring gear arrangements. The hydrostatic system changed that completely. Power could be adjusted fluidly. The machine could regulate its own speed and digging rate with far greater precision. The operator had genuine control rather than just an on-off switch. The significance of Barber-Greene's hydrostatic crawler trencher cannot be overstated. Post-World War II, as hydraulic technology matured rapidly, it was largely Barber-Greene's pioneering work that gave the entire industry a template for how modern trenchers should be built. The hydraulic revolution in trenching that took place in the 1950s, which made trenchers faster, more efficient, and dramatically more powerful than their pre-war predecessors, traces its roots directly to what Barber-Greene developed in those earlier decades. Barber-Greene itself eventually pivoted more heavily toward asphalt paving equipment and other product lines, and today the trencher legacy of the company is largely forgotten. But the hydraulic systems that power virtually every large trencher built in the past 70 years owe a debt to what Barber-Greene pioneered. Number 6. The Tesmec TRS 100, 1951. For the first half of the 20th century, trenchers had a hard limit. They could handle soil, clay, and moderately difficult ground. But rock, solid rock, brought even the biggest machines to a standstill. If you hit rock, you stopped and called in a different solution, typically explosives or specialized drilling equipment. Tesmec, an Italian engineering company founded in 1951, changed that from its very first year of operation. The Tesmec TRS 100, produced in 1951, was the first trenching machine capable of cutting through very hard surfaces, including solid rock, without explosives. This was a breakthrough that redefined what trenching could mean as a construction method. Tesmec achieved this by developing specialized cutting chains, equipped with hardened teeth designed specifically to fracture and remove rock material, rather than simply scooping loose soil. The chains operated at rotation speeds that generated enormous heat. Chain trenches can reach up to 370 degrees Celsius while cutting through rock, and the hydraulic motor systems had to be engineered to absorb the massive shock loads that came from repeatedly striking hard stone. Rock trenching completely changes what a trencher is capable of. In soil, a modern chain trencher can sometimes cover more than 1,500 meters in a single day. In very strong rock, that same machine might cover only 15 meters per day, but it is still cutting through solid rock continuously, which previously required blasting and manual excavation that was far slower and far more dangerous. Tesmec went on to become one of the global leaders in rock-capable trenching machines. Their later TRS series models, including the TRS 975 and TRS 1100, a machine that weighs 75,000 pounds and stands 12.5 feet tall, pushed rock trenching into the realm of industrial-scale operations. But it all started with that 1951 machine that first proved rock could be trenched at all. Number 5. The Ditch Witch Model C, 1949. While Parsons, Cleveland, and Barber-Greene were chasing ever larger, ever more powerful machines, one company went the opposite direction, and that turned out to be a revolutionary choice. Charles Machine Works, based in Perry, Oklahoma, introduced its first trenching machine in 1949 under what would become the iconic Ditch Witch brand. This machine featured a hydrostatic propel system and ran on a John Deere diesel engine. Unlike the enormous, expensive, site-specific machines being built by the larger manufacturers, the Ditch Witch was designed to be compact, practical, and accessible to smaller contractors. The timing was perfect. After World War II, the United States was in the middle of an infrastructure explosion. New housing developments needed utility connections. New commercial buildings needed underground electrical and gas lines. The enormous pipeline trenches being built by Trencor and Cleveland were impractical for these smaller, more localized jobs. They were simply too big, too expensive, and too specialized. The Ditch Witch filled that gap completely. Its hydrostatic propel system meant the operator could move the machine and run the digging chain simultaneously and at precisely calibrated speeds, giving a level of control that older mechanical drive machines simply could not match. For the first time, a small trenching contractor could operate a machine with the efficiency and precision of much larger equipment. The Ditch Witch Model C essentially made manual trench excavation for utility installation obsolete overnight for small and medium contractors. Within years, machines that were previously the exclusive domain of large pipeline companies became accessible to neighborhood utility contractors. This democratization of trenching power is one of the most significant but least discussed shifts in construction history. Ditch Witch, now owned by Charles Machine Works, which remains headquartered in Perry, Oklahoma, continues to operate today and remains one of the most recognized names in compact utility trenching. The company went on to build the RT125 Quad, a 121 horsepower machine featuring a massive quad-track undercarriage as the modern descendant of that 1949 original. Number 4. The Buckeye Traction Ditcher Steam Monster. Early 1900s, we return to the Buckeye Traction Ditcher Company, but this time not for the humble number 88 that started it all. This time, we are talking about what Buckeye built once they had decades of engineering experience behind them. By the early 20th century, the Buckeye product line had expanded from that original steam-driven ditcher into a staggering range of machines. At the small end, they offered a 10-horsepower gasoline-powered Model O wheel ditcher. At the large end, they were building steam-driven monsters, and the word monster is not an exaggeration, capable of cutting trenches 54 inches wide and 12 feet deep. Think about that for a moment. A trench 54 inches wide, that is 4.5 feet across, and 12 feet straight down, dug in a single continuous pass by a steam-powered machine at the turn of the 20th century. At a time when most construction was still being done with horse-drawn equipment and human muscle, Buckeye was fielding machines that could reshape entire drainage landscapes in a day. These were not small, nimble machines. They were enormous mechanical systems driven by steam with multiple operators required to run them, transported in pieces and assembled on site. But their power output for the era was nothing short of staggering. They could drain entire fields, dig utility corridors, and cut foundation trenches at speeds that made manual methods look absurd by comparison. The Buckeye Traction Ditcher Company would remain the largest tile ditching and construction trenching company in the world for more than 50 years. The company went through multiple ownership changes over the decades before eventually discontinuing production in Findlay, Ohio in 1973, although the machine's legacy lived on through successor companies that continued manufacturing compatible designs. Number 3. The Vermeer T855 Trencher. 1990s. By the 1990s, trenching technology had reached a point where machines were no longer just digging ditches. They were industrial-scale earth-moving systems capable of reshaping entire landscapes. One of the machines that perfectly represents this era is the Vermeer T855 Trencher. Vermeer, the Iowa-based company founded in 1948 by Gary Vermeer, had already built a reputation for powerful underground construction equipment. But the T855 took things to another level. This massive chain trencher was designed primarily for large utility and pipeline projects, where long continuous trenches needed to be cut through extremely difficult ground. Powered by a high-output Caterpillar diesel engine producing well over 600 horsepower, the T855 delivered the kind of brute force required to cut through packed soil, limestone, and even moderately hard rock. The machine rides on a massive tracked undercarriage that distributes its enormous weight across the ground, allowing it to crawl forward while the trenching chain continuously chews through the earth. The digging chain itself carries dozens of hardened steel teeth, arranged in patterns designed to maximize cutting efficiency while reducing vibration and wear. Depending on the configuration, the T855 can dig trenches more than 10 feet deep and several feet wide, making it ideal for major infrastructure projects like fiber optic cable corridors, large water pipelines, and energy transmission lines. But what really made the T855 stand out was its reliability. Contractors working on multi-mile pipeline jobs needed machines that could run for long hours without constant breakdowns, and Vermeer's engineering focused heavily on durability and serviceability. Because of that reputation, the T855 and its successors became common sights on major trenching projects across North America, Europe, and parts of the Middle East. While it never achieved the mythic status of some experimental machines, the Vermeer T855 represents something just as important: the moment when trenches evolved into the rugged, high-production machines that modern infrastructure projects depend on today. And even though thousands of miles of trenches have been cut by machines like this, most people driving past construction sites have no idea the kind of engineering power working beneath the dust. Number 2. The Trencor T1860HD. Trencor has been building large track trenches since 1945. Making them one of the longest-running names in the industry. But their most powerful creation, the machine that most people have never heard of, is the T1860HD, a chain trencher of almost incomprehensible scale. The Trencor 1860HD weighs 227 tons, that is approximately 450,000 pounds, or roughly 225 times the weight of a standard passenger car. It uses two separate engines, a 8095 kilowatt engine driving the digging chain alone and a completely separate 224 kilowatt engine dedicated entirely to powering the crawler tracks. Total combined power output tops out at approximately 1,200 horsepower in standard specifications, with some documented versions of the machine reaching higher figures. The cutting chain on the 1860HD holds between 300 and 350 individual teeth, arranged in a chevron pattern around the chain. The machine can trench to depths of up to 25 feet. The chain operates at speeds that generate temperatures reaching 370 degrees Celsius, hot enough to glow in low-light conditions when cutting hard rock as it chews through whatever the earth contains. In favorable conditions, soft mudstone for example, the 1860HD has achieved trenching rates of up to 1,500 meters in a single day. In very strong rock, that drops to as low as 15 meters per day. But in both cases, the machine keeps moving. Nothing stops it. The cost of operating this machine is staggering. The logistics of transporting it across job sites are complex, and yet for major long-distance pipeline projects with the right geological conditions, nothing else approaches its production rate. Trencor was acquired by Aztec Industries and later integrated into Aztec Underground, where the brand continues to operate. The T1860HD remains one of the most powerful chain trenchers ever built for land-based pipeline applications. It is a machine that most people, even many people within the construction industry, have never seen and could not name. That qualifies it as very much forgotten, despite its extraordinary power. Number 1. The Enshore T3200 subsea trencher. Every machine on this list has been remarkable. But number 1 is in a category entirely by itself, not just because of its power, but because of where it operates. The Enshore T3200 is the world's largest and most powerful subsea trencher. It does not dig trenches on land. It digs them on the ocean floor. The T3200 weighs 170 tons in air, approximately 375,000 pounds. It delivers 2,200 kilowatts of combined motive, trenching, and jetting power. To put that in context, 2,200 kilowatts is approximately 2,950 horsepower, more than double the combined power output of many large land-based pipeline trenchers. The machine's central chain cutter delivers 800 kilowatts of cutting power alone and can dig to a trench depth of 3.5 meters, more than 11.5 feet in seabed that it physically moves across. A separate 600 kilowatt jetting system produces 2,200 cubic meters of water per hour at 6 bar pressure, capable of fluidizing the seabed material around the cutting zone to allow deeper burial and better spoil removal. The jetting system can operate independently of the central chain cutter or in simultaneous tandem depending on the seabed conditions encountered. The T3200 is deployed to bury subsea power cables and pipelines, the cables that carry electricity between offshore wind farms and onshore grids, the pipelines that transport oil and gas from seabed wellheads to shore. These cables and pipelines must be buried beneath the seabed for protection against ship anchors, fishing equipment, and seabed currents. Operating this machine requires a surface support vessel, remotely operated control systems, and a support team with specialized subsea engineering expertise. The T3200 operates in seabed conditions that would be completely inaccessible to any land-based machine and has a proven track record of successful burial in some of the most challenging seabed environments in the world. The engineering required to build a machine that can operate at full industrial power while submerged, managing hydraulic systems, power transmission, cutting chain mechanics, and jetting systems in a saltwater environment at significant water depth, represents one of the most complex mechanical engineering achievements in the trenching industry. And yet most people have never heard of it. If you found this video interesting, subscribe for more deep dives into the heavy machinery and engineering history that most people walk right past without knowing it exists. There is an entire world of extraordinary machines out there, and we are going to find every single one of them.